Okay, so this is the answer key, video answer key for lesson 8-6 worksheet number 1. All right, so on this first one here, again, when we have a number out front, we are going to make a list. So we've got 1 times 5, and then 1 times 9, and 3 times 3. And we're going to be looking for inside outsides that work to get us a 4, a negative 4 actually. So now keep in mind your signs. This would be a positive, negative combination here since it's a negative 9. So outsides, 1 times 9 is 9, 5 times 1 is 5. So that's looking pretty good because I know I'm going to subtract since they're different signs. So if I make the 9 negative, that will get me a negative 4. So my combination is 1, 5 and 1, 9. So now keeping it in order, you get 1x, 5x. On the back side, you have the 1 and 9 right here, so I need the 1 and 9 back here. So I'm going to put 1, 9, keeping everything in the right order. And so now when I look at this, 1 times 9, I need that to be the negative, and then the 1 times 5, I need that to be positive. Okay, and then just keep in mind that you can FOIL this out. 5x squared minus 9x plus 5x minus 9 to make sure that this gets you that negative 4x back up to here. And if it does, then you know that this is your answer. Okay, so just keep in mind you can check all these. Okay, number 2. All right, all positives. So we know that there are going to be all positives here. I've got 1 times 7, 1 times 15, and 3 times 5 for my factors. All right, and I'm looking for something to get me a 26. Well, right here looks like 1 times 5 is 5, 7 times 3 is 21. So when I add those up, that gets me 26. Okay, so my combination here will be a 1x, 7x from the front right here. On the back side, I've got a 3 and a 5, so a 3, 5, and then we know that they're all positives, and that's your answer. All right, number 3. Again, we know that we're going to have a positive, negative combination here since we have a negative 4 right there, so we know that we're going to subtract to get to 15. So I've got 1 times 4 and 2 times 2, 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Now, when we work through this, we're going to actually find that nothing works. So when nothing works, remember, we're going to flip. So 4 times 1. Now, in reality, the 2 times 2 just stays, so I'm not really going to recheck that one. I'm just going to work with this 4-1 combo. So now 4 times 4 is 16. 1 times 1 is 1. And then I would need positive 16, negative 1 to get a 15 out of that. Okay, so I've got a 4, 1 on the front side there. So 4x, 1x on the back side. I have a 1, 4 combo, 1, 4. All right, and we know that the 16 needs to be positive and the 1 needs to be negative. Now, I did forget, though, I have a y squared out back, so make sure that you're also putting those y's in on the back side there. So that will be your answer right there. Okay, all right, so number 4. Start my list here. I've got 1 times 9, 3 times 3, 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 3 won't go, 4 times 8, 5 won't go, 6 won't go, 7. Okay, so I think those are our options. So now we know that we need a positive, negative, which means we're going to subtract to get to negative 12. Okay, so if I look here, 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 4 is 12. And if I make this guy a negative, that will get me to the negative 12 right here in the middle. Okay, so my front number is going to be 3, 3. So I have a 3x, a 3x. My back numbers are going to be 4 and 8. Okay, and then I know I want the 24 to be negative, and I want the 12 to be positive. And that's your answer right there. Again, you can check these to make sure you're getting them all right. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to do 1 times 7. And then I've got 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Okay, so now I start running kind of through some inside outsides. I'm going to find that nothing works. So I'm going to go ahead and flip one of my sets. And now if I look here, I've got 7 times 6 is 42. 1 times 1 is 1. And then I would need both of them to be negative to get the negative 46, and that works because a negative times a negative would also be a positive 6, so that's all good. All right, so my front numbers are 7p and 1p. My back numbers, oh, we know our signs are negative, negative, and my back numbers are 1, 6, so 1, 6. Again, keeping it in the same order that you found it. Okay, okay, so on this one, it looks like it's possible square root one. So when I look here, can I square root? Yep, and I get 10 times 10. Can I square root here? Yep, 7 times 7. So let's try those first before we make a big long list here. So 10 times 7 is 70. 10 times 7 here is 70. Well, 70 and 70 gets me 140. So I have 10x and 10x on my front part here. On my back part, I have 7s, and since it's all positives, we've got positives. Now, please note, your answer could be this. Some of you might see this. Remember that squared right there just means write it out twice. So either one of these answers would be good. I would take either one. All right, let's go to the next page here. Okay, so now this was a review. I gave you some helpful reminders there of things to think about. Okay, so first thing we're always going to do is look for a GCF. So in this case, let's see, they're all even. So I know a 2 can come out. And then if I'm looking variable-wise, I'm only going to be able to pull out the A's because that's in all 3 parts. The B's are only in 2 of the parts, so I can't pull a B out here. So I'm going to pull out a 2, and then A's, pull out your smallest. I'm going to pull out 6 A's. So I have 10, no A's, 3 B's left, plus 16 divided by 2 is 8. 6 A's moved out. That means there's 1 A left and 1 B left. Minus 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then all the A's moved out. And that's all I can do here. Now remember, you can't go any farther. Even though this is a trinomial, you can't go farther because this is not a quadratic. And it's kind of a hot mess anyway. Remember we talked about hot mess, just pull GCF and move on. Okay, so again, keeping in theme with GCFs, let's pull out a GCF here of 5. So I get 9x squared minus 1. Okay, so now this is a 2-parter, so I have to check, do I have a difference of squares, or DOS? That's what we're asking ourselves. So remember, can I square root? Do I have subtraction? And can I square root? If the answer is yes to that, then let's go ahead and break it down. So we get 3x. 3x, remember it's a plus minus in the middle since it is a difference of squares. And then the square root of 1 is 1. And that's your final answer. So when you've got a 2-parter, just double check, can you go farther before you stop? All right, so 4-term grouping here on this one. Okay, so 4 parts. Okay, first off though, I'm looking, is there GCF in all parts? I do not see one, so I'm gonna go ahead and start grouping, keeping that negative, right? Keep that negative with that 35 there. Let's see, on this first one, I'm gonna pull out a 3 and an n squared. So I get 7n plus 5. On the second one here, I'm going to pull out a negative 5 and get 7n plus 5. So my insides match. So now I do a rewrite, 3n squared minus 5 and 7n plus 5. All right, on this one, factors of 60, that gets you negative 16. 10 and 6 pop into my head right away. If not, just make a list till you find something that works. So in this case, if I make them both negative, a negative times a negative gets me a positive 60, but when I add them up, I get to negative 16. So my answers here are going to be n minus 10 and n minus 6. Okay, so again, go back to your GCF rule. So always pull a GCF first. So I'm going to pull out an n and get n minus 9 left. Now, when I do this, I have subtraction. I can square root 9. I cannot square root this n because there's a 1 there. Anytime you see a 1, you're done. There's nothing else to do. Okay, so that's your answer on that one. Number 12, I'm looking for factors of negative 15 that get me 2. So 3 and 5 kind of come to me pretty quickly. And I would need to make the 3 a negative to get a positive 2 in the middle. So now when I multiply, I get negative 15, but when I add, it gives me 2. So I'm going to have p minus 3 and p plus 5. Okay, first thing we're doing on this one is let's be pulling out a GCF. So I'm going to pull out a 5. Okay, so pull a 5 out. I get a squared minus 3ab minus 4b squared. Now, this is a trinomial. Okay, so this is a trinomial and it's following a pattern. You've got your quadratic shared in the middle, quadratic here, so that's good to go. So I need to see, can I find factors of negative 4 that give me negative 3? Well, if you're kind of thinking about it, 4 and 1, and then if I make the 4 negative, so when I multiply, I still get a -4, but when I add them, I get -3. So now the 5 is going to stay out front. A squared is just going to break down to A and A. You have a -4, a +1, but don't forget about the b's on the back side. You need to put those on the back side as well. And that's your answer. All right, and number 14, there is no GCF here, so it's a two-parter. So I'm checking, can I square root? Yep. Do I have subtraction? Yep. And can I square root? So this is going to be a DOS, or difference of squares. So I'm going to get 2r minus 3 and 2r plus 3. And that concludes this answer key.